Casey Holtschneider. I'm the executive director of the LYTE Collective. The LYTE Collective is a nonprofit organization formed to support young people experiencing poverty and homelessness in Chicago. The gravity of sort of what we're talking about with young people who are experiencing poverty and homelessness and the consequences of that, the dangers of that, are as big as it gets, right? We're talking about young people who are losing their lives, but we're also talking about young people who are losing their futures. And so why now is because it's fairly unconscionable that we haven't been able to do it yet. So there's a couple layers to what it takes to end poverty and homelessness, right? We're talking about massive policy issues in this country. We're talking about systematic structures that, we're talking about structural violence. We're talking about systematic structures that exclude people from the resources and the opportunities that they deserve. So, systematic issues as big as affordable housing, as big as racism, as big as youth unemployment, that these, all of these factors feed into young people being able to have sort of not just stable futures, but joyful futures, futures with the lives that they dream of and they envision. So unless we make some significant changes around sort of those structures that actually cause and maintain poverty and homelessness in the first place, we're not going to move the needle very far. And I think that's on the larger scale. One of the other sort of reasons why we haven't been able to do it is we haven't been listening to young people about what they need, about what's working best for them. And that's a big driver of what LYTE is all about, is making sure that sort of the voices of young people are, it's not just rhetoric that we use, that we really sort of are intentional about youth-driven services and making sure that that is sort of leading the way in every capacity. I conducted a study with young people who had been formerly homeless as youth. And I talked to them now, sort of years after leaving. Many of them are in their late 20s and their early 30s, about what had happened sort of in their lives after they had left services, and also kind of what services had been most beneficial to them, to sort of tease out and also build some of the foundational principles and services that we're going to provide at LYTE. One, that young people need people. They need the same things, sort of youth experiencing poverty and homelessness need people. They need the same things that all of us need in our lives to move forward. And that's each other, and that's a community of people around us to catch us, because things don't just sort of move up in a straight line, right? You sort of get to a final point and everything clicks and all sort of makes sense. We need to lean on each other and move forward in our lives together. And so one of the biggest things that many organizations don't have a large focus on is building that support system and that network of community for young people that's going to last them for years to come. And that's something we want to build at LYTE, is to make sure that there is a durable and sustainable hub of folks that people can depend on, and also building out their community networks that can sort of drive them through. So that was one of the big findings, was around this piece of community. The other really massive piece, which has also informed kind of how we're providing and designing services, is around which services should be at the front. And a big thing that I found out in the research, and other research supports this pretty clearly, is that recreation services are incredibly powerful and instrumental for young people who are in high crisis situations. So things like music and arts-based programming, exploring the cities, exploring the world around them, community activism, right? Sports, that writing, all of these sort of activities that when you invest in young people in these ways and engage them in these ways, that it starts sort of this movement where young people can then sort of gain the self-confidence and the esteem and feel valued in a way and seen by the world that allows them to then move forward into stable employment, right? To maintain housing and to really fight for their futures because they feel like people are investing in them. So one thing we're doing at LYTE is really flipping kind of how traditionally organizations have valued services. And generally they've put kind of the basic needs up front, right? So the beds and the food, which are incredibly important. They're absolutely important. But folks have seen these other things as sort of arts and music and sports programming and writing and poetry and these things as ancillary. They've seen them as outside, and because of that, they get cut often and they aren't prioritized. And what we want to do is make sure that we're listening to young people who are clearly saying these are core, these are central, these need to be the focus of what's going on. In the background, we will have all of those basic needs services. We will have food always available, and laundry and showers, right, and storage, and connecting young people to safe housing, of course. But we want young people to come to the lounge and to be a part of the LYTE Collective because of their dreams and their passions and their talents, and that they have people investing in those sides of them. The story of LYTE sort of launched kind of out of the research and with a couple of young people in particular who talked about wanting to do something, about having felt the support that they were given, and also understanding sort of some of the findings of the research and how to reprioritize services and wanting to give back. So there was this kind of piece where coming out of the study, I felt like I had learned so much about how to do this in a different way, that we had to go and do it, that we had to act. But LYTE is also not just that out of the research. It really is a culmination of thousands of conversations over the last 15 years with the folks who make up the collective. These are the most experienced, talented, and skilled folks I have ever worked with in my life, who have had incredibly innovative and exciting ideas about how to do this work differently. And those ideas have popped up in different corners all over the place over the last 15 years and didn't have a home. They didn't have a place to come alive. They didn't have a place to take root. And so LYTE is a combination of all of those ideas and those conversations driven by the research and the current voices of young people to build this space, to build this sort of new way of thinking about services. I'm excited about every part of the LYTE Lounge. I'm most excited about watching this shift of thinking about putting sort of recreation services first, right? Investing in a music studio, investing in arts, investing in young people in these other ways so that they aren't just reduced to their crisis situations, right? And I'm excited to see the energy that takes root there and what comes alive in the lounge because of that. And so I'm just incredibly excited to see the space, yeah, I mean, not to be repetitive, to come alive in that way. We're talking about making some pretty major shifts in how the work is done at LYTE. And this sort of level of shift in not just kind of what services are provided and how and when, but the philosophy which guides them is something that I think would take sort of established organizations some time to make those changes. And we just feel the gravity of that the time is now and we've got to move and we know how to do it. Putting recreation services first, right? Putting a focus on that is a pretty big change. This movement away from using traditional language, right, around sort of client and case management, these sorts of things that have been institutionalized in our organizations, and us intentionally saying that the young people that we work with are not cases to be managed, right? That they are our family, they are our community members, they are our neighbors, our sisters, our brothers, our friends, right? That these are young people that we care for. Making these sort of shifts, although to us seem natural, can take a very long time in established organizations. And so we feel like we know how to do this in a different way. We've got the experience to do it, and the time is now to do it. LYTE Collective. Live your truth everywhere.